Radio Free Asia.
Could you give me some example of the impact that Cambodian people and Cambodian society have received from what happened during the Khmer Rule regime?
Sure. Well, I mean, among the things that of course are still with many Cambodians today, admittedly a minority of Cambodians, because most Cambodians are too young to remember that period. They were born after it. But for the older generation, the terror of living in a society where you could be killed at any moment for doing almost effectively nothing wrong. I think psychologically those things stay with people for the rest of their lives. The profound damage done to Cambodia's culture, to religion, to society as a whole. I think those things are quite hard to put back together again. And I mean, it's of course Cambodia has come a long way since 1979, but I think a lot of those damaged elements still remain, and I think they will take perhaps some generations to work out, as we've seen in other countries too. I mean, this is not just a Cambodian thing. This is a human thing, and it does take a long time to put things back together.
Yeah, Comrade Deutsch, the man who ran the notorious prison S21, is a central character in your book, both during his revolutionary day and during his subsequent trial in 2009. How did you first come across the story, and did you speak to him directly when you, for your book?
So I first came across Deutsch's story when I read Nick Dunlop's book called The Last Executioner.
I read that too. Yeah.
Excellent book, and Nick put a lot of work into trying to find Deutsch, and eventually found him in some lot. So that was the first time I'd come across the name of Deutsch. Of course, I'd been to S21, I went to S21 many times over the years, and learned more about Deutsch as time went on. In terms of interviewing Deutsch, no, I asked twice for him to interview with me after his trial, and he said no both times. So what I was forced to do, I was forced to interview Ritti Pan. Now Ritti Pan, of course, Cambodia's preeminent film and documentary maker, has spent many years on the issue of the Khmer Rouge regime, on all of those related issues, and he spent hundreds of hours interviewing Deutsch. So, given that Deutsch would not interview with me, the next best thing was to then interview with Ritti Pan, who knows Deutsch very well and has a good insight into Deutsch's mind, and that was a very valuable part of the book.
Another question is, the UN backed Khmer Rouge Tribunal has in recent years put Deutsch and a handful of the surviving Khmer Rouge leaders on trial. What are the main positive and negative outcome of the tribunal? Did your book assess on that as well?
It looks at that a little bit, not a lot. I think the way the tribunal is viewed by different people view it in different ways. For some people, it's just not good enough. For others, it's an acceptable judicial solution. And I think depending on, individual people have entirely the right to accept or reject the tribunal as they see fit. The tribunal itself is dealing with an impossible task. I mean, how do you have some reckoning for what happened here? It's simply, nothing will ever be sufficient. It can't be. So the tribunal by default is always going to fail in some ways. The tribunal itself could have been better run, need not have had any corruption associated with it, which it has, could have been free from political interference, which it has not been. Despite all of its failings, and there are plenty of failings that people know about, I think it has been broadly successful within its limited mandate. And at the end of the day, a very few people have been put on trial, have been found guilty of crimes against humanity, war crimes, and that's very important. It shows there is some reckoning. It is too little, it is too late, but it's better than nothing. And I think that will prove to be as the years go by for Cambodia, and the younger generation particularly, who will have a better chance to learn about what happened in those years. I mean, this is a Cambodian crime that was committed, and it's important that young Cambodians understand what happened. And I think the tribunal has helped with that. Not least, the Documentation Center of Cambodia, working with donors, put out a revised history textbook for schools. I think that's very important. A comprehensive history of what happened, the what happened and the why that happened to Cambodia. I think that's very important. That's not a direct cause of the tribunal, but I think it's an indirect consequence of it, and I think it'll prove to be very important.
Do you think the Khmer Rule Tribunal going to leave some legacy of rule of law for the national judiciary?
That's a good question. I mean, certainly one of the goals of the tribunal when it was set up was to leave that sort of legacy. The problem with Cambodia's judiciary is not that people are necessarily incompetent or don't know the law. It's that they're not allowed to practice the law impartially, because politics, the executive, has such a hold over the judiciary that judges simply can't rule on the facts. So that's the real problem with Cambodia's judiciary. It's not that officials of the courts don't know what the law is. It is that they are circumscribed, they are controlled by the executive, and they choose to operate within that system. So potentially, yes, there could be some benefits for the national judiciary, the national justice process in Cambodia. But like I say, the problems don't lie with a lack of knowledge of the law. They lie with political interference in the courts.